How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to give an elite profile on Kyrie Irving, the elite starting point guard for the Brooklyn Nets. And I think what my intention with these profiles is to let the accolades and the accomplishments and the numbers for that he's been able to achieve through his career virtually speak for himself, as Kyrie Irving does stand to be like one of the greatest point guards to ever play this game. He has one of the greatest shots of all time. He's played on some of the greatest teams of all time. You cannot really go through NBA history and basketball history and not mention Kyrie Irving. That's how that's how dynamic he's been to the sport, and he only turns 29 today. So if you've never heard of Kyrie Irving, just to give a bit of background, he stands at about 6'2", 195, so he's a little skinny. For a basketball player, he's a little short, but of course he makes up for it and just like and is just sheer knack for just making a play. He's incredibly crafty. He knows what he's doing with the ball, which is one of his best traits. He's probably one of the best handler of the basketball that I've ever seen. An amazing shooter, incredible shot creator, and I mean just consistency time after time, and he's continuing to get even better as a basketball player. So without further ado, I'm just gonna give the background and just start from the beginning and get to where we are right now. So he was originally born in Melbourne. He would eventually come to the U.S. and go to high school in New Jersey, where he would establish himself as the number one prospect in the class of 2010. And after that, he would go on to play 1 year at Duke. And because he was Coach K's first serious one-and-done prospect, because that's when Coach K really started his run in about the 2010s with Kyrie Irving. And there are a lot of stories that I know just being a Duke student about Kyrie at Duke, but I mean, that kind of takes away from the point of this profile. But once again, at Duke, he only played about 8 games. He averaged about 17 points, 5 assists, a steal and a half. But he would eventually get hurt. He injured his right big toe, but he came back for the tournament. He played his last game, scoring 28 points against Arizona in the Sweet 16. But to give you a good idea, that's how good Kyrie Irving was. He only played 8 regular season games and what would be 3 tournament games, and he would still be taken with the first overall pick in the 2011 NBA draft by the Cleveland Cavaliers, who of course were struggling in the absence of LeBron James, because that was right after the Cleveland Cavaliers had gotten rid of him. But of course, right then and there, Kyrie Irving was ready to establish himself as a player that the world was ready to see for their own eyes. Starting in his first season with Cleveland. In the 2011-2012 season, he would start 51 games for a Cleveland Cavaliers side that would finish with a 21-45 record. That would go on to be the 13th best record in the West's 3rd worst record. And in that season, Kyrie Irving would go on to average 18.5 points, 3.7 rebounds, 5.4 assists, just over a steal, just under half a block, averaging 30.5 minutes a game while shooting 47% from the field, 39.9, but virtually 40% from 3 on 3.6 attempts. And then he also went on to shoot 87% from the foul line, as of course with this Cavaliers team, his rookie season, he had to be the go-to guy. And in his season, he would not make the All-Star team. Obviously, it's very tough for rookies to make it, but he would go on to be named Rookie of the Year in 2012. And I guess that was just a taste, and everyone was starting to get a sense of what this player could do when he's fully healthy, when he's fully ready, and once he gets older. Leading into his age 20 season in Cleveland, Kyrie would start all 59 games for a Cleveland Cavaliers squad that would go 24-58. Like after the lockout season, even though they played more games, they only won like 3 more. They had a worse winning percent. Like they had a worse season than they did the year before. But in that season, Kyrie Irving would be named to his first ever All-Star team in his second year in the league. After he upped his points average from 18.5 to 22.5 3.5. Not to mention he played 8 more games, and he also went on to average about 4 more minutes per game. And he also, like I said, with that, he averaged 4 more points per game. His rebounds stayed at about 3.7. His assists went up from 5.4 to 5.9. His steals went up from 1.1 to 1.5. His field goal shooting percentage dipped from about 47% to 45% as he was taking 4 more shots a game. His three-point percentage dipped from about 39.9 to 39.1 as he was taking 1 more 3 a game. So he kept his three-point percentage roughly about the same as he was taking more 3s. And then from the free throw line, he shot about 85% from the line he dropped from 82 to 80 or 87 to 85 after maybe averaging 1 more free throw attempt a game. And even though the Cavaliers would miss the playoffs completely, Kyrie Irving was starting to get the recognition that he would deserve. He would also go on to win the 3-point contest that year, but I mean, I don't know what's going on with that. So this would transition into Kyrie's 3rd season in the league and his age 21 season where he turned 22. He would start all 71 games for a Cleveland Cavaliers squad that would finish with a 33-49 record. They had 9 more wins than they did the previous year. And of course, with Kyrie Irving starting to ascend to the level that he was going to get to, he would make his 3rd All-Star game, or he would make a 2nd All-Star game in his 3rd season. And in that All-Star game, by the way, he would go on to win All-Star game MVP, the only time in which he's won All-Star game MVP in his career, but I digress. In his 3rd season in the league, he would up his minutes per game to about 35, maybe up by maybe half a minute. He played 71 games, and because he was an injury-prone player, it's a big deal. The first time he'd ever played he played over 60 games in his career. His scoring average dropped from 22.5 to 20.8. His rebounds stayed at about 3.6. His assist numbers stayed at about 6.1. His steals stayed at about 1.5. From the field, his field goal percentage dropped from 45 to 43. His three-point percentage dropped from 39 to 35. And then his free throw percentage went up a little bit from 85 to 86, as of course he was, once you make your first All-Star game, you have a lot of the best teams in the league coming at you, which is understandable. But of course, in Kyrie's 3rd season in the league, he was continuing to show why he was one of the best. And at the same time, he would go on to win the FIFA World Cup, and he would be the FIBA World Cup MVP in 2014 in Spain, following that season where they didn't make the playoffs. And then this would transition into Kyrie's into his 4th season in the league, which would be his age 22 season. And let's not forget to mention the Cleveland Cavaliers' newest addition that would take them from the 10 seed in the East to the immediate 2nd seed, as of course LeBron James did rejoin the Cavaliers in 2014-15. And even before LeBron James joined the team, Kyrie was he was a 2-time All-Star in his first 3 years in the league, and already a Finals MVP, an All-Star game MVP, and a FIBA World Cup MVP. So now when you add LeBron to that, you're going to get a deadly combo. In 2014-15, he would start the most games he would ever start in his career. He would start 75 games for a Cleveland Cavaliers squad that went 53-29. They won 20 more games than they did the previous year. I'm not going to say it was specifically because of the addition of one player, but it says a lot. But at the same time, in that year, Kyrie Irving would go on to make his 3rd All-Star game in 4 years, as he would see his minutes per game increase from about 35 to 36. His scoring percentage would jump up from 20.8 to 21.7. His rebounds dropped from 33.6 to 3.2. His assists dropped from 6.1 to 5.2. His steals still stayed at about 1.5. The 3rd straight season, he'd average a steal and a half per game, which is an incredible feat, by the way. He would also shoot 46% from the field, as it went up from 43. That shot right back up. His three-point percentage shot above 40% for the very first time in his career. It went from 35.8 to 41.5. And then from the free throw line, he'd see his free throw percentage stay roughly at about 86. 2014-15, he would go on to make the All-NBA 3rd team for so far the only time in his career. He's never I guess he's never touched it before, but he would be recognized as a top 15 player in the league alongside LeBron James. And I mean, just making the NBA All-Star game 3 out of your first 4 years in the league is a feat in itself. That year, once they made the playoffs, they would go on to sweep the Celtics in the first round. They beat the Bulls in the second round, and that's when they had Jimmy. They beat the Hawks in the conference semis 4-0, and that's when the Hawks had the best record in the entire NBA. And then that's when they went on to make it to the finals versus the Warriors, and specifically for Kyrie would twist his ankle. He had a really bad ankle injury, and he would not come back. He suffered that ankle injury in like game 1, and they more than likely would have won the series, but I don't want to talk about would-haves on this show. But at the end of the day, the Warriors won, and Kyrie Irving's absence in the finals ended up hurting the Cavaliers a lot. But they would come back a little bit better next season. And in 2015, 2016, Kyrie Irving's age 23 season, believe it or not. In Kyrie Irving's championship year, he would start 53 games for a Cleveland Cavaliers squad that finished with the best record in the Eastern Conference for the first time since 2009, 2010, since LeBron had been there. And in that, he'd only play 53 games that season, which is why why he missed his first All-Star game since his rookie year. He would see his minutes per game drop from 36 to 31, as of course he was placed on a bit of load management to make sure that he came back right. He saw his points per game numbers drop from 21.7 to 19.6. That's the only season other than his rookie year in which he didn't average 20 points per game. He saw his total rebounds drop from 3.2 to 3. His assists dropped from 5.2 to 4.7. His steals dropped from 1.5 to 1.1, as they normally do when you play 5 less minutes a game. From the field, his field goal percentage numbers dropped from 46.8 to 44.8. His 3-point numbers dropped from 41 to 32. And then from the free throw line, he at least got better. His free throw numbers went up from 86 to 85. But once they made the playoffs, Kyrie would hit a completely different level. They beat the Pistons in the first round 4-0. They beat the Hawks in the semis, or they swept the Hawks. They beat the Raptors in the conference semis, which is when they started their run where they just started destroying the Raptors every year. And then they would go on to face the Warriors in the finals. And after being down 3-1, the Cleveland Cavaliers became the only team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit to win the finals. And even in the finals even looking at how Kyrie performed in the finals, just like even in the playoffs, he would go on to have one of the best playoffs that he would have. Like even just looking at how he did that playoffs, he averaged 25 points per game for the entire playoff series, just to give a sense of what Kyrie was doing. He was dropping 40-point games left and right, alongside LeBron James, of course. Even though LeBron James got the final MVP, Kyrie Irving got the last shot. That would, of course, win the series for the Cavaliers. Kyrie Irving was a very, 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 very integral part of that Cleveland Cavaliers squad. And, of course, LeBron James received most of the love, which of course makes sense when you understand everything that goes into it. But with all that, people tend to forget Kyrie's contributions to the squad. But with that, even though Kyrie did not make an All-Star game, didn't make a single team, he did go on to win the championship, and he did change the narrative on himself. And then in the Olympics, he would play for the Olympic team that did end up winning the gold in Rio. So that's where, just to give a sense of where we are on the timeline. This would transition into Kyrie's age 24 season in 2016-17. In his last year in Cleveland, or his sixth year in Cleveland, he would start 72 games in a season where the Cavs would finish with a 51-31 record. They had 6 less wins than the previous year, but they still finished with the second best record in the entire Eastern Conference. Kyrie Irving, in his 6th year in the league, would go on to make his 4th All-Star game in the NBA, as he saw his minutes per game jump up from 31 to 35. His points per game jumped up from 19.6 to 25.2, a then career high. He saw his rebounds jump right back up to 3.2 from 3.0. His assists went from 4.7 to 5.8. His steals stayed at about 1.2, roughly the same. From the field, he shot 47% from the field, as he shot 19 shots per game, the most field goal attempts he's averaged in a season up until he got to the Nets. He went on to shoot 40% from three, the second time in his career he's ever shot 40% from three. And by then, this is on the most 3-point shots he's ever averaged in a season. And he would also go on to shoot 90% from the free throw line, the first time in his career Kyrie Irving has ever finished a season. And it's the only time he's ever played a full season and shot 90% from the foul line. And even with Kyrie Irving coming into form in his fourth All-Star season and his sixth season in the NBA, they would go to the playoffs. They would beat the Pacers in the first round, no problem. They would sweep the Raptors in the second round, no problem. They beat the Celtics by 5 in the conference finals to give a sense of where they were. And then they went on to lose to the Golden State Warriors 4-1 in the finals, because this is the year that the Warriors were able to add Kevin Durant. And once they added Kevin Durant, like a very even series tended to tip a lot in the favor of the Golden State Warriors. And then with this season, the Golden State Warriors were able to take their second in 3 and their first title under KD. KD won his first title. KD won his first finals MVP. But this was all at about the same time. And of course, even in this finals, Kyrie Irving, for the entirety of the playoffs, he was still averaging about 25 points to give a sense of what Kyrie Irving was doing that year. He would average more points in the playoffs in the year after he won the championship more than any other season that he's ever been to the playoffs. But after being second fiddle to LeBron, I guess, for too long, he decided he wanted to be the best player on his own team. So after that season in Cleveland, he would decide to play his age 25 season in Boston. And in 2017, 2018, he made the move. He would start 60 games for a Boston Celtics team that would finish 55-27. They finished with the second best record in the East, as Kyrie Irving would, of course, lead the team in scoring at 24 points per game, averaging 3.8 rebounds, 5.1 assists. I see his rebounds went up, his assists went down from 5.8 to 5.1. His steals were roughly at about 1.1 the whole time. His field goal percentage went up from 47.3 to 49.1 while averaging 2 less shots a game. His three-point percentage went up from 40.1 to 40.8 as he actually shot more three-pointers this year than the year before. And then from the foul line, he shot 88.9%, which is a dip from the previous year, but even up until then, the second highest he'd ever put up in a season in his career. And he would go on to make his 5th All-Star game in his 7th season to give a sense of where Kyrie Irving was at this very point in his career. And he would get injured right before the playoffs, so he wouldn't have that much of a contribution, but just leading off, they would go on to beat the Bucks 4-3 in the first round in a very tough series, because this is where Terry Rozier started to make his money, and Jason Tatum was starting to become the go-to guy in the Celtics. The next round, they went on to beat the Sixers 4-1. Then they lost in the conference finals to the Cavaliers 4-3. The year that LeBron did not have Kyrie Irving, and then the Cavaliers would still go on and get swept in the finals. But that's what was going on in 2017-2018 season. Just to give a little bit more context. But following that, Kyrie Irving, he would be back for the next season for Boston, and in his age 26 season, he would start 67 games for a Boston Celtics team that would finish with a 49-33 record. They had the 4th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they had 6 less wins than the year prior. In that season, Kyrie Irving would go on to make his 6th All-Star game in his 8th season in the league, and also at the same time, 6 All-Star games in 7 years, with 2 three-peats, I guess, with 2 trilogies of all-star seasons up until that point. This season, you'd see his minutes stay at about the same, go up from 32 to 33 probably. And you'd see his points per game drop a little bit from 24.4 to 23.8. His rebounds went up from 3.8 to 5, the first time he's ever averaged 5 rebounds per game ever in his career. He went on to average 6.9 assists, which up until then and currently is the most assists that he's ever put up in a season to date. He also went on to average a steal and a half for the 4th time in his career. He averaged half a block for the first time in his career. And then from the field, he would see his numbers. His numbers set at about 48.7. His 3-point percentage is at about 40.1. The third season in a row, he shot 40% from three, and the fourth time in his career up until then in his first 8 seasons in the league. And then he also shot 87% from the foul line, continuing yet another amazing season of amazing free throw shooting as the Boston Celtics would make it to the playoffs yet again. And I believe this year Kyrie contributed this time. This year in 2018-19, they swept the Pacers in the first round, and then they would lose to the Bucks in 5 in the second round. And then I think it was kind of because at the beginning of this year, Kyrie Irving, once they got Gordon Hayward and all, he said he was going to come and stay for Boston and not leave. And then right before 2019-2020, he decided to make the move to Brooklyn, where he decided to link up with Kevin Durant. And even though Kevin Durant wouldn't play, they were going to be set up to be, I guess, playing today. But looking out to how Kyrie fared after the move, in his age 27 season, he would only start 20 games for a Brooklyn Nets team that would go on to go 33-37, but they did go on to make the playoffs because they had the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference. But after starting off, he had an incredible start to the season. He had 50-point games, 45-point games. He had to get season-ending surgery on his shoulder, so that's why he only played like maybe 20 games. But in those 20 games, he actually had a pretty phenomenal 20 games. He would average 27.4 points. He averaged 5.2 rebounds, 6.4 assists. Even though it's not a full season, that's the second time he's averaged 5 rebounds. The third time he's averaged 6 assists. And this would be the first time he'd ever averaged 27 points in a game, anything close to that in a season. All while shooting 47% from the field, roughly what he was shooting before, 39% from three, which is like one of his which is about average for him, probably a little below average, but it's still incredible for any other NBA player. And he still shot 92% from the line in those 20 games. It's the highest he's ever put up in a season, but it's not a full season, so you know what I mean. But he still shot 92%. He still made 92% of the free throws that he took that year, which is still impressive. And then this would lead the Nets eventually to the playoffs, as they showed how deep of a team that they were, and they traded a good amount of those players to build the team that they have now. And then they would go to lose in the first round to the 76ers. But of course, Irving and Durant, members of the team, would not play for the playoffs, as they did make the bubble to give us so that's what the Nets were doing in 2018-2019, and this would transition into Kyrie Irving's into this current season for Kyrie Irving. Right now, as Kyrie Irving is 29, we are in Kyrie Irving's age 28 season, which is usually most NBA greats like their best statistical season. This season he's seeing his numbers go up from even like the 20-point season, or from last year. He went on his numbers, I guess if we're going to compare his numbers from his last full season to where they are now, because he's already played 11 more games this year than he's won last year. And he's also been named an All-Star for the 7th time in his 10-year career at this point. As this is the first time he's been named an All-Star for Brooklyn. He's been an All-Star for 3 teams. I don't think that many NBA players have that flex. But so far, he's started 31 games for a Brooklyn Nets team right now that is second in the Eastern Conference. They are 1 game behind the Philadelphia 76ers, as they are 29-14. They actually have a game today to win their 30th as they play at Portland. So, of course, Kyrie has a chance to show out for his birthday, and I believe he should not be injured. So, of course, that there's his opportunity. But this season, in 35 minutes per game, he hasn't averaged 35 minutes a game since his last year in Cleveland. He's averaging 28 points. He's never averaged 28 points. He's seeing his rebounds at 4.8, which is pretty high for what he usually does. He's averaging 5.7 assists, which is about a little above average for what he's used to throughout his career. He's averaging 1.2 steals. He's shooting 52% from the field. He has never shot 52% before in his life. And then he would also shoot 40.6% from three. Right now, he's on pace. This season's on pace to be his 5th, where he's shot at least 40% from 3. Right now, he's shooting 89% from the foul line as well. And the Brooklyn Nets, like I said, are performing incredibly well when he plays. And you can just see that because Kevin Durant's not playing as much. James Harden's playing every game, but Kevin Durant's a little hurt. Kyrie's playing kind of when he can, but when he does play, it's really amazing. If you ever get a chance to watch him, he's very magical. He's very intelligent. He knows what he's doing. And just the fact that he's impacted basketball in so many ways in which, like, he's completely aware. Like, he's the reason that Coach K gets all these crazy one-and-dones at Duke. He's one of the reasons why LeBron James is in the GOAT conversation. He's one of the reasons why Kevin Durant decided to pick up his entire life in Golden State with a championship-winning team and decided to move all the way to Brooklyn, New York. I don't know. Kyrie is very indirectly involved with a lot of how the NBA has shaped and how it's become the game that it is today. And with that said, I want to wish Kyrie Irving a happy 29th birthday. I know there's a lot more to come. And with that said, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to all 26 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well. Once again, today is Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and this is The Elite. Thanks for listening to my piece, and peace out. I'll talk to you tomorrow.